Erling Haaland didn't become more dangerous by scoring more goals. He became more dangerous the moment defenders stopped knowing when to act. At first they tried to step up, then they tried to drop. Eventually they did neither, because the problem was no longer his speed or his strength or his finishing. The problem was timing. And when football loses timing, it loses control. This is the adjustment that changed how Haaland dominates games without touching the ball more, without running more, and without doing anything that looks spectacular. On 30th July 2022, the Community Shield final against Liverpool delivered an early signal, one that was easy to ignore. Manchester City dominated possession. They dictated territory, but every time the ball was lost, control evaporated. Liverpool didn't chase Haaland, they protected space behind him. Haaland was physically imposing, constantly marked, constantly watched, yet functionally distant from the rhythm of the match. Few touches, minimal involvement in build-up, no ability to slow or stabilize transitions. City lost despite controlling the ball throughout the game. 2 weeks later, on 13 August 2022, the scoreline erased doubt. 2 goals against Bournemouth, a perfect Premier League debut, but the warning remained. The goals arrived faster than City's structure adapted. Haaland finished attacks efficiently. He didn't yet influence how they were built. By October 2022, the Manchester Derby amplified the contradiction. A hat-trick, a 6-3 victory, but the match was already broken open before his impact became decisive. Haaland wasn't changing the game's balance, he was completing it. Across autumn 2022, the numbers became historic. He led Europe in goals, records collapsed under pure efficiency, and with every goal, opponents adjusted, defensive lines dropped earlier, central defenders stopped stepping forward, midfield's narrowed space before the pass was played. City still monopolized possession, but possession became heavier, slower. Circulation flattened. Attacks became readable. Pep Guardiola saw the contrast before it became public debate. Individually, Haaland was redefining scoring output. Collectively, City were losing unpredictability. The striker was dominating scoreboards but not yet dominating behavior. Scoring was no longer the challenge. Control was. The real problem wasn't how many goals Haaland scored, it was how calmly opponents began to accept them. The pattern didn't emerge suddenly, it formed under pressure. On 16 October 2022, at Anfield, Liverpool made a quiet adjustment. They didn't defend Haaland on the ball, they defended the space behind him. The defensive line started deeper than normal, stepping forward was no longer the default reaction, protection replaced anticipation, center-backs delayed engagement, not out of fear, out of calculation. The risk of mistiming a step, of losing a straight-line race once, outweighed the benefit of early aggression. The fear wasn't physical contact, it was open grass. That same logic appeared on 15 February 2023. At the Emirates, Arsenal didn't confront, they contained. Central defenders prioritized recovery angles over interceptions. Running lanes mattered more than stepping into duels. Defending became a sequence of choices, not instincts. Teams believed they were buying security, but what they were really conceding was time. By February and March 2023, the Premier League entered its decisive stretch. Manchester City were still winning games, still dominating possession, still spending long phases in the opponent's half. But the matches felt controlled, not commanding. On 12 February 2023, against Aston Villa, City had the ball almost permanently. Yet the rhythm never accelerated. Circulation was clean, spacing was correct, but penetration arrived on schedule. The movements were expected, the reactions rehearsed. 6 days later, on 18 February 2023, at the City ground, the issue became harder to ignore. A 1-1 draw against Nottingham Forest. Forest didn't disrupt City's structure, they waited inside it. Haaland was marked early. Not aggressively, patiently, central defenders fixed him before the attack matured. Midfielders collapsed space before the final pass existed. The danger wasn't eliminated, it was neutralized in advance. Guardiola saw the pattern forming. The issue wasn't effort, it wasn't spacing, and it wasn't tactical shape. City structure was correct. The problem was timing. Haaland's runs were arriving too early in the sequence. Defensive lines were being fixed before City could manipulate them. Once defenders were anchored, space elsewhere disappeared. The attack was revealing its intention too soon, so Guardiola avoided the obvious response. No formation change, no role reassignment, no public correction. The framework stayed intact. What changed was the order of actions. Who moved first? Who waited? Who forced defenders to decide without clear cues? The run would still arrive. The sprint would still hurt, but only after uncertainty had settled. The adjustment wouldn't appear in the lineup. It would reveal itself in the silence before the sprint. The adjustment became unmistakable on 26 April 2023 against Arsenal. This was not a routine league match, it was a confrontation that decided control of the title race. City didn't accelerate the game, they slowed it down deliberately. Haaland stayed central longer than he ever had before. He resisted his natural trigger, the early sprint. He delayed his first movement until defenders had already committed mentally. Arsenal's defensive line paused. Centre-backs scanned for a run that never arrived. Midfielders hesitated between stepping forward and protecting the space behind them. The usual reference point disappeared. Without a clear cue, decisions stretched, spacing loosened, timing dissolved. Haaland ran less, but he dictated the behavior of everyone around him. By refusing to move early, he forced defenders to decide in uncertainty. Every extra second of waiting bent their structure without touching it. The threat was no longer in motion, it was in anticipation. 2 weeks later, on 9 May 2023, at the Santiago Bernabeu, the same behavior appeared under maximum pressure. Against Real Madrid, Haaland was almost absent in direct actions. Few explosive runs, minimal involvement near the penalty area, yet Madrid's backline never released him. Both center-backs remained pinned. Neither trusted the moment to step forward. The defensive line hovered, neither high nor deep. Haaland didn't attack depth, he controlled it. The pause became the weapon. By occupying central zones longer, he denied defenders resolution. By waiting, he prevented synchronization. With fewer sprints and longer central occupation, City gained access elsewhere. Midfielders arrived from the second line without resistance. Receivers faced goal instead of pressure. Possession turned territorial, not urgent. City no longer needed to break lines aggressively. They allowed hesitation to do the work. Structures didn't collapse through speed, they loosened through delay. For defenders, not knowing when the run would come was more destabilizing than seeing it arrive at full pace. The adjustment didn't make Haaland slower, it made hesitation contagious. The consequence became unavoidable on 17 May 2023 at the Etihad. Manchester City didn't defeat Real Madrid with speed, they defeated them with indecision. Madrid's defensive line never stabilized. Every phase of possession reopened the same dilemma. Step out or protect depth? Haaland didn't sprint early, he stayed central. He waited. And by waiting, he removed the defender's reference point. Both center-backs stayed attached to him. Neither wanted to be the first to abandon position. Neither trusted the moment to step forward. The line hovered, neither high nor deep. Suspended. Haaland conditioned the structure without dominating the ball. He didn't need shots. He didn't need volume. The damage appeared in the spaces he never entered. Earlier, on 14 March 2023, against RB Leipzig, the same mechanism collapsed at speed. The first delay was small, almost invisible. A half step late, a moment of hesitation. That was enough. Leipzig didn't concede because of a mistake. They conceded because the correct response arrived too late. Once timing slipped, everything followed. Cover runs overlapped instead of synchronizing. Distances between lines stretched. Recoveries turned reactive. The structure didn't break instantly. It sagged, and once sagging began, it accelerated. This was not chaos created by movement, it was chaos created by stillness. Haaland didn't force defenders into the wrong decision. He forced them to decide without certainty. At this level, defenders don't lose duels first. They lose timing. And when timing is gone, structure follows. In elite football, nobody fails openly. They simply arrive too late. By spring 2023, the adjustment was no longer isolated. It had become behavioral. Across the Premier League and the Champions League, defensive lines began dropping earlier, sometimes before City even reached the final third. Not because of pressing failure, because of anticipation. Teams stopped defending moments. They started defending possibilities. Midfields retreated sooner to protect depth. Backlines abandoned aggressive stepping. Pressure became selective, delayed, conservative. The pattern repeated regardless of opponent. Against City, possession no longer provoked resistance. It provoked caution. Haaland was no longer the first action in the chain. He became the reference everything else reacted to. He didn't initiate chaos with movement. He administered it through presence. City regained something fundamental. Control of tempo, control of territory, circulation slowed opponents down instead of accelerating them. Possession stopped feeling like preparation for a sprint. It became a tool of restraint. Opponents defended with one eye on the ball and one eye on the run that might never come. That split attention fractured structures, defensive units froze between instructions, lines held shape without conviction, distances stretched without pressure. When the goal finally arrived, it felt inevitable. Not explosive, inevitable. The damage had already been done. Goals were no longer triggers. They were confirmations. Football wasn't reacting to Haaland's finishing anymore. It was adapting to the uncertainty he imposed before finishing existed. This wasn't dominance through volume or speed or aggression. It was dominance through delayed consequence. Football wasn't defending against a striker, it was surviving the spread of an idea. By the end of the 2022-23 season, the discussion had shifted. Manchester City won the Premier League, they won the FA Cup, they won the Champions League, but the trophies didn't explain everything. The behavior did. Haaland no longer dominated matches through repetition. He didn't flood defenses with runs, he didn't overwhelm games with volume, he reduced his actions and expanded his influence. Sprints became selective, movements became conditional, presence became the constant. Defensive units stopped reacting to what he did, they reacted to what he might do. Lines dropped without pressure. Center backs held position without conviction. Midfields collapsed space before danger existed. Defending turned anticipatory, and anticipation without cues is paralysis. This version of Haaland didn't accelerate football, he slowed it down, he dictated tempo without touching the ball, he controlled matches before actions occurred. Once defenders began playing the game in their heads, instead of with their feet, the structure was already compromised. This wasn't dominance through force, it was dominance through control of decision-making. Haaland didn't become more dangerous when he ran more. He became more dangerous when he understood that waiting disorganizes football more deeply than speed ever could.